everybody, I'm Namita Thapar, Executive Director of MCure Pharmaceuticals, and today we're going to be talking about a very different topic, the correlation between environment and health, something that we don't think about or address as often as we should. And so today, the two experts we have to talk on this topic is Dr. Nozer, and then of course we have Diya. Everybody knows
no
Diya.
Expert.
And Diya, I was shocked to read that when you really see the causes of death in our country, over 10% of deaths in our country are caused by respiratory diseases. And environment has a very, very strong impact on respiratory diseases. I know that you started your activism and you started speaking up after you saw your own mum battling with chronic pulmonary disorder for years. I'd love to hear more about that.
You've actually addressed three very important things in your opening statements. The first is the correlation between the health of the environment and human health. I think a lot of people find a disconnect between the two because we are actually the only species on the planet that has created a living world outside of the natural world. We've built walls, we've built cities, we've removed ourselves from nature. So we think that we have no connection with nature when in fact, everything that we need for a healthy survival comes from nature. Mm-hmm. So I think what is more important than the luxury of homes and cars and upscale urban centers is the urgency of clean air, clean water, and clean soil to grow our food in. And of course, a healthy climatic system that supports our life and livelihood. The second thing that you brought up was, of course, the fact that my mother has suffered from COPD. So the first indicator, the first thing that we needed to check was her heart and her lungs. And when we got tests done, we discovered that she's got COPD. And I would not have been alarmed if it wasn't for an event I had just done with a young girl called Aisha, who was 16 at the time, possibly younger. And she had COPD caused by a surgery, but she was basically raising awareness on the pollution levels in Delhi and of course other parts of India. And I had participated in that program. And I came back from that event and I discovered that my mom was getting breathless and instantly ensured that she gets the right tests done and meets the right doctor. And if it wasn't for that awareness that came from that, that event with that young girl and understanding how there was a significant rise in air pollution levels, not just in Delhi, but in several parts of India. So 15 of the most polluted cities on the planet are in India.
My God.
I think it takes for civil society to get together and ask the right questions, to get some momentum on, first, cognizance of the fact that our air is polluted, and then second and most importantly, implementing measures that combat air pollution.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important to talk about what is the impact on health. So though I've been in pharmaceuticals for so long, we address the bigger issues, but we don't really think about environment. And that's why, Dr. Nozer, I'd love for you to give a medical opinion. And of course, Diya, you've been working on this for a decade. In your experience, how strong of a threat is it to our health and well-being? So environment is not just something good to do on weekends, but we need to do it. It's a necessity if we want to be healthy. Let's talk about that.
We share every atom and molecule with the rest of the physical world in the universe. How then do we consider ourselves to be apart from it and privileged to do what we do to it? Mm-hmm. So there will be impacts every time we try to be human, and unfortunately, it's not always the best thing that we do. And the impacts that it has on us, which we are only recently now recognizing and talking about loudly, thanks to the fact that attention is being drawn to it, is telling us about the health implications. We already spoke about the respiratory implications. Most NCDs, non-communicable diseases, are impacted in some way by what's happening in our environment. But today, considering that Uncondition yourself primarily focuses on women's health, I would like to touch upon some of the consequences for women's health, reproductive health,
Right.
and what happens during pregnancy and throughout women's lives. There are lots and lots of contaminants in our environment, and here I'd like to mention something called an endocrine disruptor, an EDC. When I'm talking about women's health, endocrine disruptors are substances in our environment which are man-made. Some of them have been banned, but they still linger in our environment in a very large quantity. And if I was to start early in a woman's life, adolescence has been impacted. We are seeing all kinds of changes in menarche, in how puberty is happening. In some cases, it is early thanks to the contaminated food, poultry, dairy that we have. In other cases, it is delayed. When it comes to reproductive health, I have a very interesting experience. When I was a student, male infertility was defined as a sperm count less than 60 million. 25 years later, we have changed that level and brought it down to 20 million.
Wow.
Because if we had kept it at 60 million,
No one
then
would qualify.
almost every man in the world
My God.
would find it difficult to qualify. This is not just true of human beings. This is across species.
But sorry to interrupt, is there scientific publication and enough studies done to show that this is correlated to environment?
Many
many
For the
studies.
non-believers?
Many studies. So
This is all
basically,
evidence-based.
the culprit comes from industry, and the culprit comes from something that we use so casually in our life, and that's the plastics industry. Now, we use different types of chemicals. We use things you don't even realize in your soap and your shampoos and your cosmetics, what we call as plasticizers. You use others in your, whatever you're using in your kitchen, your bottles, your lining of your utensils, and somewhere it finds its way into you. And in others, even when those have been banned sometimes a decade or 2 decades ago, we've put so much into the environment that it's still there.
Right.
So, in a non-scientific way, if one were to understand what he's saying, it's that we have to recognize as human beings that what we put into the environment is going to come right back to us.
Correct.
Right? Whether we're polluting the air, we're introducing toxins in the air, we're toxins in the soil or in the water, it's not going to disappear miraculously. It's going to stay there. And if it's staying there, it's coming right back into our system, into our body, and that is going to have an impact. He mentioned plastics, another statistic that really is deeply upsetting and unsettling. And as women is something that should really propel us into stubborn action, is that plastic has made its way into the bloodstream of babies. It's made its way into the breast milk of mothers. It's made its way into the brain. So plastics don't go anywhere. We might assign an age. We might say that one plastic bottle that you consume water from lasts in the environment for up to 800 years. But nobody is accounting for the microns that don't go anywhere and permeate our lungs, our blood. And what does that do to the human body? It's contributing to a significant rise in cancer, and less endocrine disruptors leads to all kinds of severe illnesses in the human body. So
you spoke about stroke as well, right?
yes, so toxins contribute to a rise in pulmonary disorder, strokes, cardiac events, but more than anything else, what really bothers me as a mother is that it impairs the growth of my child's organs. So right from an early age where, the lungs should be growing and flourishing and the brain health should be flourishing, we're basically impairing all of that function because of the pollution in everything.
Can you speak a little bit more? This show is for laymen and laywomen to really understand what exactly can they do in their daily lives to make an impact?
Namita, the power of choice is the most powerful action.
Yeah.
So, I mentioned warrior moms. That's just one example. There are people who are cleaning up beaches. There are people who are innovating. There are people who are setting up companies. You introduced the fact that there are more and more sustainable companies coming up, investing in them, promoting them, questioning policy, questioning government, reaching out. Like this morning, I put a tweet out asking the BMC why there were no advisories for schools in Mumbai when the AQI had crossed 300. So this is active citizenship. We all have to participate in it. But what can you and I do at home? Refuse single-use plastics. That's the simplest and the easiest go-to, right? Compost and segregate waste at home. Make sure that the industry we work in, all of our workplaces, the schools our children go to, everyone is understanding how to manage their waste better, is understanding how to compost waste, because I'm talking about waste because waste leads to a significant contributor to air pollution.
Right.
Landfills catch fire. We all remember Deonar. I'm trying to make a reference to something that has
Absolutely.
happened.
It's important.
That we've experienced. So when we manage our waste better, we reduce pollution to air, water and soil. I'm no one to speak for public transport because I use private transportation. But if we can use more public transportation, it really helps. One family having 4 or 5 vehicles, all of them being on the road, contributes to vehicular emission, which is not great. I think we all need to start holding the industries that exist around us more accountable. And I think industry leaders themselves need to start making themselves more accountable for the environmental pollution that they're contributing to, and recognize the fact that it's only impairing the health of their elderly at home and their own children and their own lives. I see big, tall sky rises at night, which are office buildings, fully lit up, and it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
It's a visual that perhaps cinema has offered to people, and it's such a terrible narrative, because what we're basically doing is we're consuming wastefully, and that's what's got us where we are. That's what's creating the climate crisis or the triple planetary crisis. So consuming less, wasting less, switching from regular CFL bulbs to LEDs, refusing single-use plastics was one of the first few things I said. The other thing that I think we can all do is plant more trees.
Right.
And nurture them till they reach a point where they're completely independent and don't require support.
And I think this is where I want to shift back to doctor, because even post-pregnancy, I believe in menopause and in all other aspects, there must be severe impact.
Yes. So first, I know we did talk about what happens to children as they grow. It's impacted pregnancy. We are seeing direct links between what happens to the woman in her environment and preterm birth, low birth weight babies.
Yeah.
There are linkages with chemicals in the environment. There are linkages with heavy metals. There are linkages with BPA. There are linkages with PCBs, with phthalates. So we now have direct links, scientific links, which show how it can impact a pregnancy. A woman who's pregnant exposed to the endocrine disruptor, remember we mentioned that earlier, an endocrine disruptor mimics the hormone estrogen.
Oh, really?
Yes. That's why it impacts. Just imagine you're exposing the male to estrogens, so his counts go down.
Correct.
When you expose a pregnant woman to this synthetic estrogen, there are effects. About 30 years ago, there was a drug called DES, diethylstilbestrol, which we gave women thinking it helped protect their pregnancies. It was terrible, because the women who were pregnant with a girl child had girls born with certain defects in the uterus. We stopped using DES, but I still see those defects. And I see those defects because now endocrine disruptors are doing what DES did. So it was classified as a DES exposed uterus.
Right.
There is no more DES, but I still routinely see and treat the DES exposed uterus.
So you'll see a newborn girl child with
Who then has
issues with her
implications
uterus.
when she goes ahead, because more miscarriage, more preterm birth, more infertility. So this is as far as pregnancy goes. We've spoken about the child, Dia spoke about neurodevelopment, and we know there are again direct linkages with environmental toxins and exposures to the child's, whether it be behavioral problems, whether it be other things, there are direct links.
Right.
And finally, if I was to kind of fast forward to the midlife and menopause, we know what estrogen does to certain tumors in men and in women.
Right.
And we are seeing an uptick in breast cancer. A lot of it is lifestyle, a lot of it is diet, but a lot of it is also what the environment is putting into them. So implications throughout life. And like I said, here we focused on a woman's life. It impacts everyone's life.
So it's up to us to ensure that what is healthy and safe for human health and the environment becomes the norm.
Last year, there was a company called Rare Planet that works with karigars to make kullats and copper bottles and basically a lot of sustainable products. And they have their stores at airports.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, Dia, I'm so proud to say I was the investor in that company, and it's a #1 success story of season 1. It went from 4 stores, airport stores, to currently 32 stores.
Lovely.
And it's gone from 70 lakhs revenue a month to 4 crores revenue a month.
Yeah.
And so Rare Planet and Rano, the founder, has shown that sustainability, doing good, can coexist with great numbers and making a lot of money for investors like me.
And not just that, I think everybody needs to understand the interrelation between ecology and economy.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't separate the two, just like you can't separate human health from environmental health. It's not two different things. And next time, hopefully, you will have like somebody who's an economist who will show you through evidence that where you have a healthy ecology, you will have a healthier economy.
Absolutely. And now to some happier stuff. You're a new mom.
Yes.
So how has the whole, since this is a women's health channel, I'm sure a lot of women listening to you want to know about your journey, both with pregnancy and motherhood. How has it been, Dia? And any tips for our pregnant and young mothers from you, from stuff you've experienced and want to share with them?
Okay, let me start off with saying that I am so grateful to Dr. Nozer for helping me bring this beautiful child in this world. My pregnancy and my delivery wouldn't have been as safe as it was if it wasn't for him. And this despite some really life-threatening medical challenges.
Oh.
It was ironic how it happened, but in my 5th month, I developed an appendix issue.
Oof, it's painful.
It was painful. I was in excruciating pain. We had to get an appendectomy done. And subsequently, I had a bacterial infection that gave me rigors that would last 45 minutes to an hour. 4 people would have to hold me down. My fever would spike to 102. I was hospitalized for over 10 days on 2 instances. This was just my 6th month. On my 2nd release from the hospital, I started spotting on the 2nd day. I had to be rushed to get a sonography done, and we realized that my placenta was hemorrhaging. So he had to pull baby out, save lives, which he did masterfully and gracefully. And if it wasn't for him, I don't know if I would have gone through all of that as peacefully as I did.
So you delivered in your 6th month.
I
And
did.
what was the weight of the baby?
820 grams.
Strong mother, strong baby.
And 36 hours after birth, he went in for surgery, because most extremely prematurely born babies do suffer certain medical complications. And in our case, he had a perforated intestine that needed to be addressed.
What's his name and how old is he now?
He's Avyan Azad. His sister named him Avyan.
Beautiful.
And I named him Azad because it's something that I'd actually tattooed onto my wrist a few
I've not
years
seen
ago.
That. Lovely. How old is he now?
He is 16 months, corrected
God.
age.
Doc, any parting remarks? You always give very brilliant parting remarks. Any taboos that we should be busting? Because that's a big part of this show too. Anything from a medical standpoint that we missed out that you would like to add?
So rather than medical standpoint, I think something you said and something Dia said.
Yeah.
You talked about the fact that most people won't consider environment and its implications a priority.
Right.
And Dia said that if we communicated the implications of environment, it would become a priority. And maybe that's where we failed. Nobody can afford illness. Nobody can afford death. Nobody can afford something impacting a family member. And we have failed in communicating to large numbers of people this linkage.
Absolutely.
And this program probably will make that linkage.
I really hope so, because that's the objective. You know, more of us need to speak up. More of us need to show those numbers.
अरे
and
जान
statistics.
है तो जहान है,
Oh, that's
जहान
very
है तो जान है. मतलब और वो कौन सा जहान है जो poisonous हो? मतलब it's as simple as that.
Very true.
How can that be so difficult for people to
Absolutely.
And if you were to communicate this,
Yeah.
who wouldn't want a better
Yes.
life?
Yeah.
If
Very
only
true.
they knew better.
Very true.
Exactly.
Very true. Very, very beautifully said. So, you know, I don't think I need to give a conclusion. Dia summed it up beautifully. Jaan hai to jahan hai. And jahan hai to jaan hai. Right? So why don't we make our jahan, the environment, safer, healthier, better, and like she said, a stubborn call to action. Warrior moms can be just warrior people.
Yeah.
A larger movement. Most importantly, let us get educated. Let us understand the implications, the statistics in our own little circle, wherever possible. Make the changes in our lives. Educate the people around us. And this will snowball into hopefully a much larger movement that will make it a much safer, better, healthier world for our future generation who we love with all our heart. Thank you for yet another brilliant, brilliant episode of Uncondition Yourself.
ढूंढने है वो निकली तकदीर अपनी उजली ढूंढने है वो निकली तकदीर अपनी उजली इल्ली ने मन में ठाना है बन के उड़ना है